Hello everyone, my name is Karan Bilati and today I'm here to discuss about the SQL commands of the subject Relational Database Management System. And so you'll find this interesting because you're going to know in the detail the commands of the SQL. So let's get started. These are the content. So first we're going to talk about the introduction part and then I'm going to tell about the types of the SQL commands and then their real usage and its example and then the summary part and we're going to see the future scope in this. Then I'll just conclude the topic and then I'm going to tell about the reference part and then yeah, finally the thank you part. So let's get started. Now, what are the SQL commands? SQL commands are the instructions. It is used to communicate with the database. It is also used to perform specific tasks, functions, and queries of the data. Now, SQL can perform various tasks like create a table, data to the table, drop the table, modify the table, and set permission for the users. So overall, it is the command which are the instructions. Now, what are the types of SQL commands? One is DDL, which contains create, drop, alter, truncate. The second one is DML, which has insert, update, and delete. The third one is DCL, which has grant and revoke. The fourth one is TCL, which has commit, rollback, and save point. And the last but not the least, it's a DQL, which has select. So we're going to talk about DDL. What is DDL? DDL means data definition language. Now, DDL is used to define the database structure or schema, as you can already figure from the data definition language that it is used to define the database. So DDL is also used to specify additional properties of the data. Now, DML. DML means data manipulation language, which has insert, update, and delete. So DML statements are used for managing the data within the schema objects. So DML are of the two types. The first one is procedural DMLs, which requires a user to specify what data are needed and how to get those data. The second one is declarative DMLs, which are also known as non-procedural DMLs, which it requires a user to specify what data are needed without specifying how to get those data. So the next we're going to talk about are the next two. So we're going to talk about now the TCL command, which is transaction control language. So what is transaction control language? These are used to manage the transaction in the database. So these are used to manage the changes made by the DML statements, and it also allows statements to be grouped together into logical transactions. Now we're going to talk about the data control language. What is data control language? Now, it is a syntax similar to a computer programming language and used to control the access to the data stored in the database authorization. So, in particularly, it is a component of the structure query language, which is SQL. Now, as we have seen the theory part, we'll get into the real life usage and the example of this. We'll see how it benefits us in the real life. So I'm going to talk about two examples. Now I'm going to give you two examples, which are the first one is about the food storage and the second one is about the medical store. So we are using it every day in different situations like the food storage, medical store, clothes, cupboard, etc. and are related to database because database is like a container. Now, the first one example is about the food storage. The second one is about the medical store, as I've said earlier. So the data is typically organized to model aspects of the reality in a way that supports the processes requiring information, like such as the modeling the availability of storage in the kitchen in a way which supports finding what items with quantity details, like suppose. Now I'll tell you in detail. We want to find how much rice is remaining in a rice pot. Then we can see that pot and find out. And suppose our food storage is in the kitchen. So if we find rice pot is empty, then we can fill that simply by inserting new rice into the pot. So here we'll call it as an insert statement, which is a DML command. Now suppose we daily use sugar to make tea. If we see there is only little sugar remaining in the pot, then we simply update that sugar with the new one. So here we'll call it as the update statement. Now some items have manufacturer and expiry date. If any item expired, then simply put that item into the dustbin. So here we'll call it as a delete command. So in some situation, we use same name for two different items, but there may be a conflict. So now we're gonna just rename it. So like there is the oil, coconut oil and the sunflower oil, and we can't give both same names to it. So now we'll simply rename it and we'll say it as the rename command. So that's it about the real life usage and its examples. And now I'm going to talk about the summary part. Now, what does SQL stands for? Structured Query Language. And what is SQL? It is a language to communicate with the relational and the object-oriented databases. Now, with the SQL new tables, the relation and schema, which can be created, altered, and deleted using the commands which are the create, alter, and drop table. Now, this part of the SQL is also known as data definition language, which is DDL. Now, more important, in the daily use of the SQL are the data query manipulation commands. Now, these commands allow you to insert, delete, and update the values in the database. Now, SQL is also used to control the access restrictions to the database or to patch with it. Now, I'm going to talk about the next thing, which is the future scope. Now, as you have seen, the summary part to that, what does it actually includes? Now, we'll see that do we have any future in this thing? Now, we're going to talk about the future scope of this. So now the SQL developers are sought after of the expanding dependence, like on the information. So turning into a SQL engineer can be a fulfilling and the satisfying vacation. It's like the Microsoft SQL Server is among the best three RDBMS frameworks, and getting the right skill for turning into a SQL Server developer. Now, which will work well for you and open many job opportunities. So the most SQL developers are either database specialists or in the managing database advancement. So yeah, it really has a better future scope in this. Now, I would like to conclude my topic by saying that the breadth and scope of the SQL commands, it provides the capability to create and manipulate the wide variety of the database objects, like using the commands create, alter, and drop. Now, these database objects can be loaded with data using commands such as insert. The data can be manipulated using a wide variety of commands, which are used as select, delete, truncate, and as well as the cursor commands, which are the declare, open, fetch, and close. Now, the transactions to manipulate the data are controlled through set commands plus the commit and rollback commands. And then there's the last one, which is grant and revoke. Now, these are the references from where I took some of the help, as you can see it on the screen. Thank you so much for your patience listening.